What is up, everybody? I'm here with the one and only Sean from Comics and Crypto.
What's up, everybody?
What's up, my man? Yo, so I have to admit, like, I've been following your content like daily. Like, every time there's a new video, I'm like, oh my God, is this comic worth something? You
Yeah,
guys are so damn professional. I mean, I like just the editing and like everything that goes into your content is just like magnificent. And I'm like, I don't know if I've told you this, but I'm like slowly like taking points from you guys. I'm like, oh, that's a cool giveaway. Let me change my background. So, yo, I'm a big fan, man.
thanks so much, Chad. Man, I've told you many times you're the reason why I got into VeVe, man. And for
It's so
everybody who's
crazy.
new, yeah, for everyone who hasn't heard this story, back in I think was it March or April, somewhere around there, I came across Chad's videos talking about the importance of FAs, the significance of FAs, and being a comic collector that spoke to my heart. I'm like, okay, licensed brand FAs, he's definitely onto something here. And then I watched more and more of his content, and it clicked. And it's because of your content that it led me down this incredible domino effect that led me to here today, man. And I'm eternally grateful for you, Chad. Like really, really
So
above it.
crazy. It's
Like,
just amazing. And I'm like, now, like, I would have never known that. And like, just seeing everything that you've pulled off on VeVe, like, I know that you have like a sub 1000 secret rare FF1. Sorry if I just exposed
yeah.
that.
Oh no,
You
it's
know,
okay. It's been on the market for
yeah,
$1 million.
yeah, exactly. Whoever wants it, you can call us
Hey, it's up for
on.
grabs, guys.
Yeah. But bro, like it's just insane. Like, and some of these prices, like just watching the evolution of this stuff, like, and for anybody that also doesn't know, I sold off Sean a secret rare Spider-Man way back in the day for to pay for some things. And he literally, as I gave it to him, he's like, okay, buddy. He's like, thanks for this great deal. But just so you know, I'm going to give you a chance to take it back. I've never seen somebody so nice in the crypto space. Cause he's like, this thing's going to go to the moon. And I was like, yeah. Like, it'll probably hit 100K one day. I didn't think that it was going to be within like 4 months of that transaction. So thanks for being so genuine, dude.
Of course, buddy.
Yeah. And that's what we always say, right? Like, as much as we like give out advice and stuff, like there's also so many like lessons that I've learned and like so many mistakes that I've made. So, I made some great moves and I made some bad mistakes, and it's all part of the fun, part of the journey.
Exactly, man. And you take that with you, and you teach it to other people. They learn from your mistakes, you learn from the mistakes that you made, and they've made you a better investor because of it. you
Right,
know so
exactly.
like so it yeah it's all gonna work out in the end, man, for you, for sure.
Yeah, thanks, boss. And I mean,
Yeah.
just going back to your memorial video, if anybody didn't see that,
Yeah.
please go watch it. It's one of the I actually rewatched it like 3 or 4 times, just and sat there with a glass of scotch and was just like, yes, because so much fun. Like, especially with, like, in the early days, right? Like, people would just be like, there's no way this is gonna go over even 1,000 for Todd. There's no way this is gonna be worth anything. And everybody sold at like an extreme loss or like a very low amount. And it's just seeing the video and seeing like partners at 2K and then at 48K, seeing Secret Rare Spider-Man at like 1.6 to 80. Like, that must have been so much fun for you making that video.
It was super fun. And a big shout out to the community who helped to get involved in that. They sent me a lot of screenshots, and I
Sweet.
remember I took a lot of screenshots as well, because I just knew in the end, like, I'm gonna come back to this. I'm probably gonna make a video on this one day when this thing moons. I didn't expect it to be like 2 or 3 months later.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was super fun making that video. Yeah, it was Spencer and Kev helped out. It was a lot of fun. A lot of fun. I've been wanting to do that for a while, but I had to wait. I had to wait till it was obvious that this is like a 9-day difference.
Right. 100%. And man, like, the one thing too is like, if you were holding the right bag of stuff, like, you did an easy 10 to 15x. So some of these people that are
Yeah.
holding like 80,000 are now like, I'm seeing like 22-year-olds being like, I've got a $1.5 million vault and I'm in my like third year university. And I'm like, I think I'm just going to quit and do NFTs. And I'm like, well, I don't know if that's a good idea, but congrats to you being a millionaire. Yeah.
Yeah, I know some high schoolers that are making amazing moves. It's
Jeez.
unreal. Yeah. I'm like, how do you get 18? Okay, well, at least this conversation's legal, so that's good.
Yeah, exactly. Bro, and congrats on the sponsorship, man, from
Oh,
Elite
thank you so
Comics.
much, Chad. Thank you.
Wow. So like,
Yeah.
yeah, like, tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So Elite Comics 11, they're the number one powered, trusted community sales page on Instagram.
Wow.
So very much like VeVe, they have a very strong community of collectors that are really passionate about the space. And I've been buying and selling from their Instagram page for about 2 years.
Wow.
So I've been, yeah. So I mean, some of my biggest comics are from Elite, and yeah. And when I started this podcast, I just told myself like the first group that I wanted to work with or collaborate with was Elite Comics 11. And I
Right.
told Ali that, Ali's the owner. Big shout out to Ali,
Ali.
amazing guy. Yeah, amazing guy. We just released a video today, breaking down his company and some of his collection, which is unreal. The guy's he's got an FF1 and two amazing fantasy 15s, which is the first appearance of
2.
Spider-Man. Which yeah, he has two. Yeah, one
Wow.
signed by Stan Lee.
That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah. So yeah, so we're working hard together to bridge the physical and digital world of collecting.
Amazing.
That's what which we're really, really excited about. He's very excited about getting involved in the space. And he bought some of his first NFTs recently. He bought a Spider-Gwen and an ultra rare MC1.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
I actually saw that, the ultra rare, like, and that's a sleeper too. We always talk about that, but
Oh yeah.
what is it,
big
like
time.
3.5, 4K right now?
Yeah, it's hovering around 3. I think somewhere
Yeah.
around 3, which
Come
kind
on.
of yeah, the dip, yeah. I think actually went below that a little bit, which just blows my mind, man. I mean, when that's sitting at 3 and you're looking at the secret at 75, I mean, everyone saw my tweet. I mean, hopefully everybody saw that tweet I made about the Marvel Comics 1 Secret Rare that Spencer, Kevin, and I worked on. It basically assesses our belief that MC1, where it could potentially go. And I think it's very possible this thing could hit $1 million one day. And
I totally agree.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
just the market. I mean, here's what the thing that's crazy, Chad. The market cap alone. I mean, aside from the value, the historical and pop culture value that it has, you look at market caps, right? There's 600 of them, and at $1 million, it's only a $600 million market cap.
Right.
The CryptoPunks and Bored Ape Yacht Club right now has about 2.5 billion. It may have increased since then, but even if you look at like Todd, for example, even at $100,000 floor, you're looking at a $750 million market cap.
Right.
So even Todd at $100,000 floor is still a higher market cap than Marvel Comics number 1 at $1 million floor, which just blows my mind. That's crazy.
Right. Wow. You know, that's insane that you say that, because I was even thinking about like Walt surpassing like $200 million. And it's just like the market cap, I think, right? If I'm
Oh,
not
okay.
wrong. Yeah,
Oh,
sorry.
yeah.
Yeah. So I sold.
And
yeah,
everyone
sorry.
lived happily ever after.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but I mean, that's an amazing point you make, because it's like that kind of goes to show you the room for that one. And I think we were talking about that. You know, that was my next question for you actually, is what NFT is likely to hit 250K first? And as much as I love the secret rare Spidey, like, I don't know what it is, but I have a feeling about Marvel 1 SR, just because there's 400 fewer mints. And it was it's based off the first ever Marvel comic in the world. That's also the first ever Marvel comic in the digital universe as an NFT. And I'm like, man, like, I just see that at like that historic thing. And then on top of that, like, it's a proven entity in the real world already. So it seems like, I think for any bigger, more like historical kind of traditional investors, that would be just an easy being like, oh, I can understand, the symbolicness between the two. So I'm thinking, like, what do you think? First one to hit 250K?
It's tough because I mean,
Yeah.
Spider-Man is the most popular character in the world. There's no question now. I mean, especially after the recent news of the film passing Avatar. Like, whoa, let's go, Spider-Man. Everyone is excited that owns a Spider-Man first appearance. That's for sure.
Right.
But yeah, to the total editions or total collection of that NFT is 60,000, right? So how is the rest of the collection going to affect that secret rare? That's what I'm very curious about. Because if people can't, spend money on that, then they're like, okay, well, I'll just go for a low mint common, or I'll go for, a common or ultra rare. I'm very curious about that, because it doesn't. Marvel Comics number 1 doesn't have the popularity as Spider-Man, but it's quickly growing on VeVe, right?
Yeah.
And that's something that we've talked about before. Is that when they first announced Marvel Comics 1, I thought that was interesting, because that comic has a lot of historical value, but it doesn't have any pop culture value.
Right.
The physical comic. And let's see, it dropped in 1939, I think, and it was under the umbrella Timely Comics, which eventually became Marvel Comics. So that's what a lot of people don't know, is that this actually wasn't under the Marvel Comics umbrella. This was under Timely Comics, which eventually became Marvel Comics number 1. And then Fantastic Four #1 was the first comic under Marvel Comics, the first collaboration between Jack Kirby and Stan Lee. Yeah. Yeah.
So I didn't know that. So I mean, that's interesting for all the viewers, because I think there's a lot of people that aren't like comic experts that would be learning that this is the first time as well. So I mean, that's good to know, and it gives more emphasis also for FF1, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so the reason why I brought all that up was because when they announced that, I was kind of shocked. Like, okay, that's interesting. Marvel Comics 1, I get it, but I thought it was gonna be Fantastic Four #1. But now that seeing where it's gone and how people feel about it, I've come to realize that this comic, it had historical value, but now it has pop culture value because it's the first comic NFT dropped by Marvel Comics.
Right.
And everybody who's on VeVe right now, I can almost promise that less than 1% of people who came into VeVe, they didn't know about Marvel Comics #1. They didn't know about its value.
Yeah.
But now the 99+% of users who use VeVe absolutely know its value, and they know it's a grail. And they know it's incredibly scarce and valuable in the physical world too. Or most of them probably do. But yeah, it's wild, man. I mean, there's only 64 physical copies in existence for Marvel Comics 1.
Wow.
So between that and the secret rare, there's only 664.
Dude, that's a great point you make, right? Because between the two, it's still that limited. That's insane when you start thinking
crazy.
about it. Yeah.
It's absolutely crazy. Yeah.
So it's interesting. So this is where I wanted to pick your brain, because, you and I always talked about, like, because some of these, variants, for instance, like the Marvel Comic 1 is a variant of a cover, and the secret rare, and then Spider-Man secret rare is kind of like a variant of the statue in a sense, where there's only 1,000 of them. And I'm like, okay, so I'm paying an extra, let's just say $50,000 over, let's say the ultra rare, because it does a backflip and because it has fewer mints. You know what I mean? Like, we start doing the math, you're like, wait, does this make much sense? But the biggest thing that, you and I talk about is that you're taking an extremely important NFT, like first ever Marvel or first ever Marvel comic book, and then you're taking a subsection of it and then saying that that's the variant. And then if you get a sub 100 or something even lower, then you're even increasing that scarcity even more, where you become almost like a one of two or a one of three people holding something so valuable. And one thing that I learned from Pokemon was, like, Charizard holographic, no big deal, like, still sold for a lot. But if you had like a Gem 10 mint, if it was shadowless, and if it was a first edition, all of a sudden now that's a $250,000 card plus. And so, like, that's how I see these things. Like Spider-Man, I'm like, okay, you get a common floor, great, it's still a grail. But, like, if you can get that secret rare low mint, like that 45 that I saw flashing on Twitter, then that's the ultimate. So I think that makes sense. But now what I wanted to pick your brain on is Walt, because Walt, you don't have to worry about all these other mints. You're limited to 4333 and all that value. That's why we have a massive market cap in that thing. And Mickey Mouse now, first appearance, is, only 4,333 people in the world can ever say that.
Yeah. I mean, you're looking at a collectible that has probably the most significant FAs in NFC history. I mean, really, Walt Disney he's probably the most celebrated entrepreneur of all time.
Wow.
I mean, he's looked up upon by almost everyone. I mean, what he went through to create Disneyland was nothing short of a miracle, and to turn into what it is today is just incredible. But to have Mickey Mouse and Walt Disney together on one NFT is incredible by itself, not including the possible utility, which we've talked about pretty often. Again, this is speculation, but I mean, at this point, it just feels like more common sense than anything else, Because it's in their best interest to make this NFT the most valuable as valuable as possible, because they get 6%, off of every sale moving forward forever. And also, it's just great marketing. You tie this kind of utility to the park. It's already statued at the park, so it's a great representation of Disneyland. So, yeah,
man, I love all those points, and it's so massive because Disney's such a huge corporation, and there are all these characters embedded within it. And I think you and I both talked about this, but it was like when I saw Walt for the first time, I was like, oh my God, this is like Disney's stamp almost. Like, this is like just the encompassing everything that has to do with Disney. And, like, bro, like, one thing that I was thinking about today was, like, as much as there's, like, 2 new Mickeys in the app, I'm like, there's probably going to be thousands of Mickeys just in VeVe, and thousands of Mickeys in other NFT projects. And I'm like, and it all comes back to Walt in a sense, right?
Yeah. I mean, a great case study for that is Todd McFarlane Batman. I mean, how many Batmans do we have on there right now? And it's not stopping Todd from doing well. It's not stopping Todd at all.
Such a good point, though. Yeah.
And also, we're probably gonna get a lot more Mickeys, but I would not be surprised, at least for a long, long time, we don't see any more Walt Disney NFTs, like of Walt Disney. I
Right.
mean, they are incredibly sensitive over his IP, but also obviously the brand. But here's a good story. There's a museum in San Francisco called the Walt Disney Museum. It's Walt Disney Museum about his life. The family made it, right? And because the family's is in the Bay Area, they live in the Bay Area, so they organized a museum about his life, and they wanted to call it the Walt Disney Museum. And then Disney Corporation came to them and said, "You're not calling it Walt Disney Museum. You're not calling it that. That's our brand." They told the family of Walt Disney that they can't call the museum Walt Disney.
God.
And it's like, okay. And the thing is, it's kind of messed. I mean, it's really messed up, but at the same time, the museum is beautiful, and it's a great representation not only of Walt Disney but also their brand, right? Yeah. Of the Walt Disney brand. But in the end, they came to an agreement. The Walt Disney Family Museum is what they ended up calling it.
Okay.
But can you believe that? Like that's how sensitive like, they are over that brand. Yeah, right. They're like, no. Right. So I think it's very possible. I mean, unless the only thing I can really think of a reason for bringing him back is like if they do live action stuff, maybe like the actual speech of the opening of Disneyland, like that kind of stuff would be incredible. Yeah, big shout out to VeVe Magic too. Like I mean, I saw you guys' video and it was, oh my gosh, it was so good. You and Silicon, and that was so much fun. Like I said, like as you know, my mom is a huge Disney fan, right? And I was like, Mom, get the popcorn ready. We're gonna watch this together. And she we did, and she loved it. We're over there on a Friday night. We watched it. Oh, she loved it, man.
Dude, that's so good. Like, man, I love having smart people like yourself on the channel. Like I said, I just shut up and listen. And you guys do the magic for me. And like VeVe Magic did that. She was like, before we went on, she was like, oh, I'm a little like nervous. Like I don't know. I appreciate you giving me an opportunity. I'm like, okay, it's the opposite. Like I'm honored that you came on to share all your insight. Yeah.
I've been around a lot of Disney nuts, like fanatics like myself. Right. And I don't think I've ever been so impressed so quickly by anybody than VeVe Magic. Super impressive. I heard her I was on a Twitter space with them very briefly, and I was like, whoa, okay, what the? And I saw you guys' video, and I'm just, she's just so impressive. But yeah.
Yeah, I forgot. I think you did a Twitter space or something like that before she actually came on. Like you met her before she came onto the show, if I'm not wrong, right?
Yeah, it was very brief. I just came on, and then and Silicon brought me up, and I talked about my, the Walt statue with my mom and all that, and then we just all started talking. It was super fun. It was only about a half hour or so, but it was just a really fun conversation. I can't wait to keep that going. I definitely want to do more content with them too.
Yeah, no kidding, buddy. And bro,
they don't know about it yet, though.
We don't. No, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, surprise, guys. I'll be reaching out soon.
And dude, I have to thank you too, because if everybody doesn't know, Sean and I are pretty tight, so we're always kind of messaging on Facebook Messenger, and I'm lucky because every now and then he'll be like, dude, I think this one's a really like undervalued NFT, and he'll send me like a little screenshot of like a sub 100 mint that he just bought, and I'm always like, dude, like, why do you gotta flex like that right now? But man, there's so much like undervalued NFTs still, right? Like we were talking the other day about like Dr. Doom as an example, and I don't think enough people know about Dr. Doom. So maybe you can shed some light on that, man.
So Dr. Doom is arguably one of the most, if not the most popular villain in Marvel history.
Right.
I mean, every comic collector, when you ask them who's the most popular villain in Marvel history, they'll say Dr. Doom. He's up there. I mean, Galactus is up there too. Thanos is up there because of the films, the MCU. He's made him really popular, but Dr. Doom, he's just like, most importantly too, his comic book. I mean, it's incredibly valuable and speaks volumes within itself. It's the only FA comic book of a villain that I consider, in my terminology, a grail, because it's worth $500,000 or more in its highest grade. And on CGC, there's less than 2,000 total editions on the CGC census, so it's a scarce book. Even in the lowest grades, it goes for thousands of dollars. But in its highest grade, there's just only 3 9.6s. There's no 9.8s in existence. Jeez. And if one of those sold, which I hope one day if one does, it would definitely sell for over $1 million. I would bet my entire collection on VeVe that it would sell for over $1 million. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Pretty epic, right?
Yeah, it's incredible. And it's before he's even touched the MCU. right? And that's the biggest thing.
Right. Right. Like, so like you said, Thanos and all these other ones like Joker almost have a head start in that aspect. And I feel like that's why even for me, I was less familiar with Doctor Doom. Like I knew he was an important character and everything, but I didn't know it was at that level. And so I think a lot of people are in the same boat where they're looking at Thanos and they're looking at Joker, but really like you should be focusing on this Marvel Mighty, because the other thing too is like the blockchain matters. And that's what you and I always talk about is like the first, like regardless if it's a Marvel Mighty or not, like the first time a major significant character hits the block before anything else, it automatically cements its position in history. And then anything after that, it's just always like chasing the first, you know? And that's why like I look at these other NFT projects coming out. I'm like, you can mint all the Dr. Dooms you want. Like we've got the first one as an example, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Yeah. So what about, and you also told me recently about Spider-Gwen, I think as well, Ghost Spider.
Oh yeah. So her FA comic is Edge of Spider-Verse 2. And that comic is doing very well. I mean, after the Edges, after Into the Spider-Verse came out, her character became really, really, really popular. You know, I mean, the comic did really well before that, but it just took off, and it's sitting around a $2,000 floor now as a 9.8 grade, and there's a lot of them. See, that's the biggest thing too. Like these modern age comics, like Ultimate Fallout 4, right? You know, typically for 9.8s, you know, you look at maybe like a couple hundred on average. There were like 4 or 5,000 9.8 grades of Ultimate Fallout 4 alone, and the comic is still a $3,000 floor because I mean that's an insane market cap. And there's over 11,000 comics on the CGC census, which is ridiculous too. And it's because of popularity. I mean, there's a perfect example of popularity over scarcity, you know? Popularity is so important. And Miles Morales, that character continues just to blow me away. And I'm so excited for the future of the NFT. At first I was like, okay, yeah, that's cool. And then the more I started realizing it, the more people have access to Miles Morales' FA comic worldwide. I mean, look at Spider-Man worldwide. He's so popular. Being able to buy and sell his NFT comic instantly, it's a game changer.
Dude, it's so true, man. And like, you know, and I'm extremely bullish on like Miles Morales. Like I would even, like, depending on the mint size, I would actually sell SR Spidey to grab as many Miles Morales, because I know that that's going to pump so much where I could buy back in. Because I was thinking about it today, like there's also just not enough you know, representation for different races around the world in terms of like these superheroes. And I'm like, Miles Morales, I just look at that like as being like, you know, almost like revolutionizing kind of the industry in a sense as well. And I'm like thinking about these potential actors that would play that character. And I'm like, my God, like there's just so much room for opportunity. And I just feel like everyone would, you know, swallow this character up. Like it would almost shift. Like you could be surprised. Like all these things we have thinking that it's going to stay the test of time, like could shift, right?
I have a theory about his character. How I firmly believe he's going to inevitably join the MCU.
Right.
And I have a pretty strong, and this is I haven't read this anywhere. This is my belief. It could very well happen in Into the Spider-Verse 2. Should I say it? I don't
say it, John. Let it out.
It's not a spoiler alert because this is pretty much my speculation, but I think it's very possible we're going to see Miles Morales become human.
Right.
And Into the Spider-Verse 2, like because he's hitting different multiverses, and I think eventually, in the end, we could potentially see him become human, and it's going to dive into the MCU. I think it's going. This film could very well possibly join the MCU.
Wow.
I think it's very possible. Yeah, and if that does happen, man, be on the phone on standby opening night because you need to buy a Miles Morales comic because it'll shoot up like a rocket overnight. And that's the crazy part, right? Because speculation plays a huge part in investing in comic books now because the popularity of these characters, these FA comics, are heavily tied to the MCU. So the most popular characters essentially do the best, right? And when there's speculation surrounding a character, it drives up the value of comic books. Now, when you have access to buy these comic books instantly worldwide, I cannot only imagine what's going to happen. It's wild.
Dude, it's so true. It's like almost like if we could potentially have like an AF-15 sitting there. I mean, maybe not to that value, but like, you know, it could be something like half the value of that, right? Like who knows where it could go.
I can imagine we're going to see a huge gem squeeze probably when that happens.
Yeah.
I mean, I was talking to Ali about that comic because, you know, I was talking about AF-15 coming to, because Ali owns a couple of them, the physical comics. And he said he believes that if that comic drops, he'll probably see a lot of physical comic collectors come to VeVe purely based on that one comic alone. you can't ignore it at that point. At that point, regardless of how you feel about NFTs, if you know AF15 is dropping, you you become part of it, no matter
Yeah,
what.
exactly.
Like you cannot, yeah, you can't ignore that.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow. Bro, and like I know recently you did a bit of more of an analysis like on the market caps. And one thing that we're always talking about is like, okay, well, what's the percentage of the the NFT to its physical counterpart? But the thing that I think like that I've kind of forgot about and didn't and underestimated was that these NFTs may like drastically supersede their physical counterpart. And you shouldn't be worried about it because these are immortalized NFTs for like as long as blockchain remains important,
The thing that I've come to realize too that I'm really excited about for physical and digital collectibles, they complement each other.
Yeah.
Like the physical comic books, they have a certain value, and I've always referenced that these digital comic books are significantly undervalued because of their popularity and value in the physical world. But now we're starting to see the statues, right? We're starting to see the Todd McFarlane statue is a perfect example. Like there's not a huge I wouldn't even compare like the physical comic book collectors compared to the statue collectors.
Right.
The audience is not even close. But you look at Todd McFarlane, go on eBay and check out the past sales over the past 3 months. Back in December, you could have got a Todd statue because for $200. Now you can't get one under 800 and potentially 1,000. Yeah, for a first edition.
Right.
And there's only 5,000 of them physical, right? So I mean, it's very possible we'll see even less and less over the years because they're in physical condition. So
right,
wild.
man. I mean, that's amazing that you bring that up and I think that goes back to the point of like how much room comics still have to go, because like if you look at the statues physical counterparts, they're already like 7x'd what the physicals are, right? Like I think I did a video on like looking at Big Barda and she was $200 in the store and I was like, oh, but it's like 1.2K on VeVe. And then I was looking at something else like Joker and it was like $99. So I was like, oh, but it's 1.8K on VeVe. It's 18x the physical. So that makes me bullish on some of these other comics that are like maybe $5 in the real world, but could be $100 on VeVe, right?
Exactly. So that's why I've come to realize that they complement each other.
Right.
The physical and digital are going to win because there's enough popularity for both sides. And people who want the digital want the physical now. And people who have the physical obviously want the digital. Well, they'll soon realize they want the digital.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's exciting. Yeah.
And the physical then goes up as well, like you said. So it's like it's a win-win on either side. You know what I mean?
Super big time win-win. And you'll see like, and especially for comics that are out of reach, right? Like Fantastic Four #1. What I'm so excited about those characters and also Doctor Doom for Fantastic Four #5 is they're already safe bets.
Yeah.
Those comics are grails. They're incredibly valuable, and they are they're the introduction of some of those popular characters in Marvel history, and they haven't even been introduced into the MCU. Like, Can you imagine so in 2 years, we're going to see FF1 as a film or Fantastic Four as a film.
Right.
It's going to be directed by John Watts, who did the 3 Spider-Man films. So it's in incredibly good hands. Like it's literally the safest hands like,
in the world.
John Watts just directed literally the 3rd or 4th most valuable or most high profitable film of all time.
Right.
Like, it's in safe hands, and I am pumped. The second they announce the actors that are going to play those characters, you're going to very likely see a pump in those comics.
Wow.
It's and that's how speculation works.
Right.
And Dr. Doom, who's their arch rival, he's inevitably going to come because he's a very popular character with himself, but he's also their arch rival. So it's just logical that he's going to be joining the MCU as well. And what's interesting about Dr. Doom is that he's an anti-hero, right? So he's sometimes good and bad, very much like Loki. So we very well could see him be in the MCU for quite some time, which means he's going to become more and more popular. Jeez. Unlike Thanos, who's he's in for like 5 films and that's it. He had a fun ride and he's out.
Right. Right.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
But it's interesting they say that because it's like almost like you can almost buy something at its high too, because like that, not that it's going to diminish, but they might lose a little bit of popularity and you might not see a big enough run up as like something that's new and exciting, the shiny new toy, so to speak, is going to win that battle. So let's shift lanes a little bit. I know you and I were talking, man. I had so many people reach out regarding like the disabled accounts, people that I thought were like trustworthy, people that I, knew in the community and stuff like that. And I was like, dude, like, I'm pretty sure you're botting. Like, I can't tell you otherwise. I'm seeing a lot of them are getting enabled again too, which
Yeah.
is amazing. And I think I told you, like, my dad, his account was disabled, but they came back a week later and they re-enabled it. So they just apologized. Were like, yeah, so like, sorry, we thought it looked suspicious, but once we did a further investigation, it was fine. And I think they were just doing it like manually. So what's your experience been with some of that stuff?
I haven't. I don't know anybody personally that has been affected by it.
Yeah.
That I know personally, but there are people that I've met on VeVe that have had their accounts disabled, or through the community, throughout the community. It's really unfortunate. And but I will say that if they're innocent, everything's gonna work out just fine. You just got to be patient, guys. And the one thing I will say about VeVe, they do a really good job at making things right. So hopefully they can. We'll see how it plays out. But I wonder how much the migration has had an effect on the situation too.
Right.
And again, not trying to make excuses, because I can imagine how terrifying and frustrating that must be when you have thousands and thousands of dollars, in your account, and you're locked out. And these are NFTs. You're supposed to have full ownership of these things.
Yeah.
And that's frustrating. And then you're trying to contact support that's literally just sending you copy and paste emails, which a few of my friends have gone through, and that's awful. It's awful. So I sincerely hope that VeVe fix this, and soon.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, Sean, like, there's so much going on, and I think, like, they're probably doing an amazing job now of, like, actually catching some of these bots, because like, I've seen a lot of people that have been selling gems for super cheap offline, and I'm like, okay, that obviously is like a red flag, but it seems as though they're making like incredible progress and actually getting those bad eggs out, and potentially there's a little bit of crossfire with people that might have not necessarily done anything wrong. But I mean, I'm sure there's different algorithms or things in place where it's like picking up that activity. But I mean, again, this is all like speculation. But like, like Sean said earlier, I've been here since March. I mean, everything they've said has always come to fruition. They've always, like, supported their community as best as they can. And at the end of the day, I mean, they're gonna, for the people that have done nothing wrong, like you said, you're going to be fine. Like, it's going to work out,
And I know it seems very frustrating, especially I can only imagine if you're new to this and you just came in, you threw some coin on some new collectibles and you're locked out for doing nothing. But guys, just take a deep breath. I mean, first of all, I'm going to say with confidence, you're not going to lose anything. If you're innocent, and I have the utmost faith in this leadership team.
Yeah.
Like, they are incredible. Everyone on this leadership is incredible. They're amazing guys, and they always look out for the community. I've never seen, when I first got involved in this project, I don't think I've ever seen a leadership team get so involved with the community, and they have been doing that since. It's incredible. It's so impressive. They listen, and I know this is frustrating right now, but guys, if you were here like a month or two ago, you'd see all the amazing things that they would do overnight. I mean, I remember like the FA, going back to Captain America, FA Mighties.
Yeah.
Remember that?
I remember that.
Like, that's what company does that. Like, so if anyone who doesn't know what we're talking about, the Mighties dropped, right? The first Mighties, and it was the FA of Steve Rogers. And then it was during the whole first Marvel campaign. And then they announced soon after that there was going to be a Captain America statue, and they also gave it an FA first appearance in the article. And the whole community was like, "What WTF? What's going on? Like, how are they both FAs?" And sure enough, that night, the night before the drop, they tweeted out, "We've listened to you guys. Thank you so much for the feedback. We're going to drop the FA for tomorrow." And that was such a big stamp moving forward. I mean, that was a huge deal, because they couldn't. I mean, I don't know how they could have taken it away after they dropped it.
Right. And 100%, like, that's the biggest thing about this company over other companies is, like, they've done no marketing. They've literally tried to suppress the amount of growth that they've been seeing, and all of us are like taking this to the moon and red circles everywhere. So you're right. I mean, like, it seems as though because they've been so good to their community is like, giving it back to everybody else. Like this, this light, even though it's not a big deal, as an example to a lot of people, like for me, I was like, this solidified that, like, I was important. I was thought about by them and creating content. And like, now just that little gesture is now me being like, man, like, as other companies wouldn't care. They hire the biggest influencers. They wouldn't care about the small guys. They would just be like, let's just go straight to, was a BitBoy Crypto and all these other people to get the message out there. So It's really cool, man.
And if you guys want to question the leadership, let's put it this way. think about Disney. They're one of the largest corporations in the world, right? They're worth billions and billions and billions of dollars. They could do this themselves if they wanted to, but they didn't. They chose VeVe.
Yeah.
And they wanted to partner with them for a specific reason. And they gave them all of their IP. All of their IP. We saw Star Wars, Pixar, Disney, Simpsons, all in one collection for the first time ever.
Yeah.
That is a huge deal. Huge deal, guys. Like, I can't emphasize enough how big of a deal that is. And for them to put that kind of trust into essentially a startup. I mean, they just launched a year ago.
Yeah.
And people are coming in now. They think this is, this is how it's always been. I mean, like, Chad, we were around when there was like, what, 50, maybe 100,000 people tops?
Yeah.
It was wild, man. And now it's coming just a short, 6 months to a year later, seeing where they're at now and where they continue to go. Guys.
You're right. I mean, like, what is this? Like, breaking news: Disney, Marvel, and DC conspire to scam out 1.5 million users. Like, I mean, that's never gonna happen, right? And
never gonna happen.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, and these are the the most important NFTs or some of the most important NFTs of all time. And I mean, how could they not be, right? I mean, how could they not be? Like, these are the biggest brands in the world, the biggest characters in the world, and it's the first time they're on the biggest blockchain in the world. I mean, it's just like a no-brainer. And it's just funny because every time I see FUD or people saying different things, I'm like, guys, like, don't buy into this. Like, these are just influencers trying to decrease the price so they can get something themselves. Like, like, I'm like, just
such a good point.
Yeah.
That's so true. Yeah.
Right? Like, we've been seeing FUD since Todd was 200 gems. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Even back, I remember we were laughing over an article for the Spider-Man drop, and this one guy was just talking about how I can't believe this guy spent probably so much time writing this article about how crappy the Spider-Man statues look. This is such an embarrassing NFT. It's a guy who obviously didn't understand the space at all. But I mean, now look at him now. Oh man, I wish I would have found out that guy is and just send him that video too.
Yeah, exactly.
I have a video of a Spider-Man statue in our living room, and it's just like, dude, this is unreal. I mean, we barely even started with the AR stuff, and they're already got on lockdown in the biggest way. I mean, it's exciting.
I feel like the AR makes the NFT because I'm just so used to people just showing like a JPEG kind of file, like a flat picture. Right. And when you can project that into your digital space and it's like, it's such a popular superhero, it's just, I find it just has so much more weight whenever I'm like showing somebody,
Exactly. I mean, that's what's really exciting about this whole space. And then you hear Apple, they're constantly updating, giving updates on their AR technology and VR technology, right? And can you imagine what's going to be like being able to play with or enjoy your NFTs with AR glasses? I mean, that's when everyone's going to understand it. The problem is people aren't willing to put the time to understand it. But then when they see it, that's when they're like, okay, now I'm starting to get it. Like when Pokemon does come to this app, can you imagine being in a world where we're going to be able to play with our Pokemon that we build and train, and we could battle in our living room or battle at a park. We can battle anywhere, and it's your own Pokemon that you own. That's incredibly valuable. That's where I see this future going. And that is going to be insane. That's going to be incredible.
Can you imagine like walking around like the VeVe-verse with like your 41 minted Charizard on your bike, you're like, be quiet, Charizard. Yeah. But that's the future.
I'll take it from here.
Yeah. So, okay, I wanted to ask you this because I was like, this came up in my mind a few times and it could be a total stretch. Okay. And I actually almost made a video to this, but then I got worried that I was going to get a lot of like backlash. So I was like, nah, but I'll expose it here. So basically my idea was like, okay, you know how you go to a mall and you see them like do the huge decorations, like Christmas trees and like deers, and it takes them like months sometimes. Okay. I'm like, dude, imagine if you have like your glasses on, okay? And then you're like, oh, let me just rent all of Chad's Disney golden moments and we can just project them into augmented reality in the different parts of the mall. And that way there's no cleanup required. We just rent them out from him day to day. Am I stretching because the interoperability for that is like just so many roadblocks away, or is that a potential possibility?
I don't think it's a potential possibility. I think it's inevitable. I mean, I actually talk to my dad about that all the time because my dad is really into Halloween. He loves Halloween. I'm like, imagine being able to decorate your house for Halloween, also creating haunted houses with using decorations and with AR technology. That's the future. That's where it's going.
Yeah.
They'll definitely be the combination of the two. And I think there's, just like for film, my favorite kind of films are the ones that use practical and visual effects, because those are the films that really complement each other well. When sometimes you see films that do just visual effects. Scorpion King, good example. Terrible visual effects is awful. But when you see a combination of visual and actual practical, so practical is like actually on set, like animatronics, things like that.
Right.
Awesome. That is when you see like film at its best. And that's where I think this world could go, for that kind of technology.
Right.
The real world complementing the digital world.
And I just see it as a no-brainer. I'm like, it's so inexpensive. These companies at the friggin' switch of a flip or whatever, switch of a light, they could be like switch of a flip. These are the comments I can't edit out.
A lot of switching involved.
Yeah, this is why I never go live.
So much flipping. Flipping's on your mind, Chad.
Yeah, but like overnight, right? Like you could literally like November 1st put up your Christmas NFTs in your mall, and on October 31st you had the Halloween stuff up. Like that's the craziest thing. Like when you start thinking, and then people come in, do you want the extra premium digital experience? Okay, that's $10 when you walk into the mall, and you get to see flying crap and whatever. You know what I mean? Like that's like to me where this is going. Like that's how I see it.
And there's going to be so many businesses too that are going to expand because of that. And people are like, well, it's going to take away business from that. Sure, maybe, or it could, those have to evolve. That's just evolution, baby.
Yeah. Right. And it's like, why wouldn't a company want that? Because you're literally saving so much money. Like, you know what I mean? And then it's like on top of that, like the creativity's out the window, and then there's no maintenance costs. Like it eliminates so much baggage. It's insane. Yeah.
It's exciting. And I can't imagine like the amount of artists that are going to be able to emerge from that.
Right.
That's so cool. Oh my gosh. It's going to be incredible. It's going to be an incredible experience being able to see everyone's artwork and maybe even just walking around, just a city and seeing artwork. And maybe you could have ownership over certain areas with your art, because you're able to pinpoint locations with your NFTs. So I'm curious how that's going to come into play, right? GPS access to your NFTs and your glasses. Like that's going to be crazy because you travel around the world and you could see NFTs.
It's insane.
Yeah.
It's insane where it's going. Yeah. I mean, the big thing that I always think about is just like, can I actually like take it off VeVe one day, or can I take it like some of these, big IPs off? And I'm like, I just don't know if that could happen, because I'm like, it's Disney at the end of the day. Like, I just don't know how you can like throw a Walt around and nobody ever knows where it is. Like, I don't know. I mean, maybe it's possible, but like, do you think it's possible that like you can put a Walt in a cold wallet one day and like?
That's really tough. I keep going back and forth on that because I think the biggest thing is when you take these NFTs off of VeVe, they lose control over it. And I'm not just saying control like as in like ownership. I mean, I know it's a bit sensitive right now, everybody, but hear me out.
yeah, exactly.
Hear me out. They want to do upgrades. They want to create more options for a lot of these NFTs. I mean, Dan's talked about how he would love the opportunity to like change out Spider-Man's cape, and you can have a very exclusive gold cape. Right. I mean, they've talked about it multiple times on AMAs. I think for like Groot, I remember I took a screen recording of him playing in the VeVe app, and he was dancing, and then I put Hooked on a Feeling over on top of it and took out the music that's in there now, and it looked great. So you take away those Christmas ornaments and you play different music, you could have them year round. And I think that'd be, personally, I think it'd be ridiculous if that wasn't an option, because people could enjoy him any time of the year. Right. Same with Deadpool. Same thing.
I love that idea because, like you said, it's always new and exciting. There's like things that can be made and done. Like it's not just like this stagnant thing, and it's like you're backed up by that company that you bought into. So yeah, it makes great sense. So bro, what comics should I be stacking? What cheap comics are on the app that nobody's thinking about that I can go get?
What's cheap anymore?
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. There's not much.
Oh man, it's so tough. It's a combination of trying to get lucky on drops, trying to find value. I just keep going back to, our philosophy of focusing on the big grails and Silver Age keys. The first appearance of significant characters, and not just Silver Age. I mean, like just big keys. So big significant comic books. It's like first appearances, right? So like Ultimate Fallout 4 with Miles Morales, I think is going to do very well long term. Even right now, I mean, the NFT is at a floor of common, what, 100 gems, something like that. And that's,
Yeah.
it's crazy. For me, I mean, the comic itself, I mean, you could probably get a raw copy, which means it's ungraded, for maybe like $400. So I'm just still like trying to disconnect myself from the physical and digital, because sometimes, the digital is going to outperform the physical. I mean, I think this is a perfect example of that. It's in a way, it's already doing that now. But even that comic specifically, the secret rare is actually a homage to, or it's a representation of a valuable variant that's
Right.
worth about $20,000 as a 9.8 grade.
Wow.
So I think it's definitely one of the few secret rares that actually complements a physical variant, but it's
Amazing.
definitely the most valuable.
So question for you on Miles Morales, like how many actual physical comics, if you know this, were printed like in the world?
Oh man, I'm pretty confident there's less than 100,000.
Okay.
I feel pretty confident in that. But I got to talk to Sleeping.
Yeah. But it
Big shout out
goes,
to Sleeping Comics.
yeah, Sleeping Comics. I gotta have him on
Love
here.
Sleeping.
He's a great
Amazing.
dude too, man.
Absolutely amazing. But I looked that up a while ago, and I'm pretty sure there's less than 100.
Okay. So it goes to show you the kind of room then as like an NFT form, because that's what I always start thinking about is like, well, okay, if you can get like, if it's $400 for like just a raw version of that comic, I mean, that's some pretty damn good room. And like, I think I told you, but I went and visited like a comic book store in Toronto. Like, well, I visited a ton, but this one guy particularly was like on VeVe, and he's like, I don't believe in like this variant, but like the commons are amazing, because he's like, it's the original cover. He was like all about the commons. And he didn't care about the mint either. He was just like, I'm just going to stack these, because he's like, that's what I would do in my comic book shop. I would stack like 60 Miles Morales books, and I would just sit on them. And so he's like, that's what he's doing. He's taking that same philosophy to VeVe.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be interesting. For these comic collectors, there's a lot of people have talked about the commons themselves. Will they hold value or be more valuable because of the original covers? I think it really, at the end of the day, it comes down to personal preference, and time will tell which are more popular. But also I know whales love those comments because of liquidity. So
Yeah, that's true.
that's another reason why the prices could be going up so much. But
Yeah, it's a
I mean,
good point.
I know a couple guys own like a couple hundred each, and one guy owns 1,000. It's like, this is Marvel Comics 1, by the way, just Marvel Comics 1. So yeah, it's pretty wild.
I know a few people like that too.
Yeah, seriously. And if I have total faith in MC1 long term, man. I am like, yeah. It's interesting too, because I don't like to give public predictions as much unless I'm like very confident in where it could go. And MC1 is one of those exceptions, and I remember talking internally when that was a $50 gem floor, and we were just talking to Spencer and Kevin about it, and I'm like, this is gonna easily hit $1,000 in the future, like in the very near future. And then sure enough, like maybe a month or two later, we're at what, 500 gems.
Yeah, and it hit like, it was at a $780 floor. Yeah, like it hit that for a bit. But you're right. I mean, and it was so funny. I remember when it was 50 gems, I was like, like, I don't know. Like, it seems like it's, it was 4 gems. Like, it seems kind of at its peak for a bit. Like, this is like this, the one thing that I was totally wrong about was everything went up. Like, even things that I thought weren't even valuable, like everything just like mooned. I mean, it's some of the stuff's coming back down now, but it's kind of goes back to what they always say, just collect what you love. Because like sometimes trying to be like making too much analysis and whatever, like, if you just like literally bought a bunch of Star Wars stuff because you like Star Wars, it's been an amazing place,
Yeah, but I mean, there's a big difference between collecting and investing, right?
Exactly.
So like you're coming in, you're thinking as an investor.
Yeah.
I mean, collect what you love. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter, as long as you enjoy it.
You're right.
If you want to buy it, enjoy it. But as an investor, you got to think about this stuff. It's very important.
Yeah.
It's very important. It's like the most important thing.
No, you're right. I mean, yeah, like if you just stacked, I don't know why, but I have this thing against lumpy space princes. I don't know why. But if you just stack lumpies because you like lumpy, like you're right. It's not going to go anywhere. You know what I mean? I mean, it'll go somewhere, but not to the same extent of something else that's a grail, as an example. So you're right. Good investment decisions are important.
Not as big as Mojo Jojo. Not as big.
Yeah. So, dude, like, I know you've been coming out with like this insanely cool, like serial kind of grading system for like the way that comics are interpreted. and pretty much like how it matches up with it with like the grading system in real life, like with the serial number. Can you like shine some light on that for people and what you're thinking is?
Yeah. So Spencer came up with this idea, and it's awesome. You know, what's really cool about Spencer, he has a very, very strong crypto background. And then I had a big background in collecting and invested in comics. And that's how we really synced up and formed a really strong friendship. I mean, aside from, we actually originally met backpacking in Europe. We met in Germany. He's from the East Coast too. Yeah, isn't that crazy? One of the first times I ever backpacked in Europe, it was the first time, and I met him in Germany, and we just hit it off. I'm like, this guy, like we're gonna be friends. and sure enough, you know, he came and visited me in San Francisco, and I'm near San Francisco, and I gave him a tour of the city, and he told me about cryptocurrency, and I was like, okay, cool, man, that's rad. And this is like maybe 4 years ago. Yeah. And he's like, you got to invest in this one thing, and it was Engine Coin, right? So I invested in it, and then sure enough, like a year and a half ago, when there was that big crypto spike, I'm like, yo, Spencer, so this Engine thing, what's going on there? like it's worth a lot more than what I invested in. And that's when I went down a rabbit hole with cryptocurrency, and he started teaching me a lot about crypto. And then I was like, okay, well, let me return the favor, bud. Like, check this out, comic books. Like, I'll check out my portfolio. And he's like, oh shit, okay, what's up, dude? Comic books? It's wild. I never even thought about comic books. And so I started teaching him about comic books. And this was probably back in February. So about a good 3 or 4 months, you know, we're talking every day for a few hours, just about each thing. And he bought his first comic book. That was a really great investment. And then we both came across VeVe.
Yes.
And we saw this really cool video about FAs.
Yes. Man, buddy, okay, I just want to talk about that for a sec, because like that's insane, because that's what hit me, and I don't think many people knew what that meant, but I was like, it hit me like a ton of bricks one day. Like I just was like, whoa, wait a second. And it's just amazing that it also resonated with you. And I feel like that's almost VeVe's biggest success, is this like FA thing in a way.
Oh yeah, big time, man. And you know, and Kevin, so I've known Kevin for a long time, and we're both filmmakers, and we've worked together been close friends for over 10 years. And you know, we all started the podcast together, and we all started talking about this, the FAs. This is really significant. And we started to learn more and more, especially as the bigger characters started coming out, or more and more characters. We soon realize like these are literally gonna be the first of their kind. So if you believe in this space, these are going to crush it long term. Like these are going to absolutely crush it, no question.
Wow.
Because of the IP, you know, because they are licensed through these companies. It's exciting.
So sick. Yeah.
It's so crazy.
Man, so like it's funny because you know people always talk about FA, FE and stuff like that. But like Steamboat doesn't have that. It's still significant, but recently it's been taking a bit of a hit. I don't know if you saw that. It was like at 10K. Now it's like I saw a few touch like 6.5.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the whole market kind of is a much needed price correction.
No kidding.
I think way too much money came in at once.
Yeah, for sure.
And, you know, and I all the people that were involved, like right before that happened, they probably made some good moves, and they're like, "Oh man, this is the way it always is." And they saw a big dip. That's just natural, right? That's the way it works, really, with crypto too. But what was your question?
I even forget. I was I'm like, screw that question.
Sorry, FAFEs. Sorry about that.
Yes,
FA
yes.
and FEs. So yeah, Steamboat didn't have an FE.
Too much scotch. Nobody knows this about me. But
I was gonna make myself a drink. I should have done that next time. Yeah, exactly.
I'll have a sip now.
Cheers, buddy. Coffee. Yeah. But yes, not having the FEs it's not a big deal. And I think back when they had FEs for the Black and White series, the first Batman series, because everyone knows that Rizzo has an FE stamp on it. But I don't really think they had a true definition or had that figured out, you know. And they're not going to take away an FE from Rizzo because of that, because they've formalized their definitions now. And I think they've come because they didn't have a lot out back then, right, guys? Like they just had the statues. They didn't have anything else. Like, calm down. Like, give them a break, guys. They're like over a year old, right. You know. Right. And now they're starting to understand and figure out their definitions. And we've come to realize they solidified that on the last Disney drop.
Yeah.
So artwork is FEs, and statues are FAs. and that's okay. So that, I mean, what I'm more curious about, instead of, saying, oh no, this is, it's trying to figure it out because they solidify the definitions now, but like, will the collectibles that have FEs, the statues, will they have more value for that reason? Which is really cool to think about. Like Rizzo, even the Labracorns. Why am I pointing this way? What's over there? Yeah. Those Labracorns. With the Labracorns, they got they have FEs also, right? I mean, they are artwork, but they're also digital statues. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see how it plays out.
Man, this is interesting. So imagine if they actually took the FE badge away from the first ever set and they put it all FA, just hypothetically. Like, could you imagine if something like, people would lose their mind, I think.
Yeah, and that wouldn't work for Rizzo too. Remember
Yeah.
that? Because that's, so I don't think they'll take it away for that reason, but they'll come out and talk about it more and say, I believe they'll probably say something like, we're defining those, figure out those definitions also, and we realized it, and here we are, and good for Rizzo. He did it.
Yeah, exactly. So crazy. Yeah. So, buddy, like some of these comics that I'm looking at, right? I'm like, okay, in the physical world, I go to these comic shops and I literally buy, the counterparts of our like a new comic that dropped on VeVe, and I'm like, wow, like sometimes I get them for like $5. Like I bought ASM 252 for like $80 Canadian, like with tax, and like, so that would be like $60 American raw. And I'm like, but on VeVe it's like, $3K, or I think the high was like $7K. And I'm just like, I guess my question to you is like, how long can these actually continue to just like moon when we have so much saturation in the app after time, and there's like, potentially tens of thousands of comics that are like being released?
Yeah, it's really tough, for me for that one, because ASM 252, it's a very popular comic. I don't want to put that down,
Yeah.
But at the same time, a secret rare going for 800K, it's it's tough. I mean, it's very significant. It has an FA of Spider-Man's black costume, which is going to be significant in the MCU. So it has a lot of value, but won't be able to hold these prices. It's tough, man. It's really tough for me. I mean, there's so few of them that, if you have the right amount of people involved, it's easy to control these kind of comics,
Yeah.
And that's what worries me too. Having that, yeah.
I agree. Like, I feel like as it gets bigger and bigger, like you're just going to see these little pump groups go up, and it's like, okay, let's take this up, let's take that up, and anything low mint will go up,
How many secret rares are on the market right now? 4 or 5? And the lowest one's $800,000.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised in the future if we see wash trading happening too, man. That's like, and that's scary. I mean, that happens with physical comic books. You see that. You go on eBay, you'll see a comic book sale happen, then you go to see who bought it, and they have 0 reviews, and it's like three or 2 accounts like going back and forth and bidding against each other. It happens. But what's interesting on the blockchain, all this is going to be seen. So it's going to be easy to figure out if that's happening and who's doing it. So whoever does it, I mean, if they're guilty of it, be ready to be accountable, because people are going to know, and it's a bad look. So hopefully, there are honest sales. I do know that there's sales that have happened up to about $50,000 for the secret rare. But will it hold? That's tough for me. I don't know. I mean, these NFTs continue to impress me, but I believe that buying into scarcity more than IP is a dangerous play. Yeah. It's a very dangerous play. And you are at much bigger risk of getting burned long term. It's very important. I would much rather invest in a comic that has more significant value, that has a bigger FA or a more important FA. Yeah, that's my take on it. And I hope that resonates with a lot of people, because I want everyone to succeed. I don't want to see people get burned. That just kills me when that happens. And yeah, I think that could very well happen with that comic.
Right. So it's so interesting that you say that, because like sometimes I'm like, I look at, like, for instance, that artwork that sold for like 69 million, right, by people, and it didn't have like a physical counterpart. It was like purely a digital. Or I look at like some of these things like CryptoPunks and I'm like, they all have like meaning and significance, but there could be some random, like you said, like the power of the community could drive some of these prices that like nobody would expect as a collector through the moon. Like for instance, like those gold apes, or like Fat Cat Bronson, which you told me about. It's like, Shad, you better buy this. And I, I only bought one and I sold it too early, but anyway, well, that's the
I
difference.
didn't buy any. And I'll tell you,
Yeah. Okay. There we
I
go.
didn't even buy one. And then it was too late. I was like, it's 600 gems. It'll go down.
Yeah. Right. 5 point whatever K. I think it was like a week later. It was crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, so there's still so much uncertainty because like the community could be so powerful. And like, that's what's so interesting to me is like, as much as we're all thinking Walt and we're all thinking Todd and we're all thinking these other ones, like that gold ape or a silver ape or something completely like a Labracorn could be the golden goose of VeVe. And we're all like annoyed by it. But if like Logan Paul gets his damn hands on it, you know what I mean? And it's shooting rainbows and like, he's got that in two of his, like, motherfucker, like, yeah. Right, like that, like I don't know, like things are, so that's the other thing where like these spec plays or these other things, like I'm not totally closed off to, like it's not like it, and I think I've said this before, but like I look at like the grails as like mutual funds, like RRSP, savings account, and I look at these other things like high risk, high reward,
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the Labracorns especially. I mean, anybody who I've talked to about NFTs has heard me talk about the Labracorns at least once, because I love Labracorns so much because they were the first time that I finally had a case study of popularity over scarcity, right? So,
Right.
I mean, you're looking at the Labracorn, it's twice as valuable as the rares, and they have double the editions because of supply and demand. The demand is higher than the supply, and they are awesome. They're super cool. Like I actually bought one finally for the first time like a little while ago, and I want to buy another one because I have a lot of faith in those. But yeah, it's interesting to see how VeVe is going to turn a lot of these collectibles, because people are very excited about a lot of these collectibles with not necessarily the biggest IP, but they're creating significant popularity for a lot of these collectibles. So it's gonna be exciting to see how it turns out long term for a lot of them.
Yeah. One thing that we talked about earlier, which was really cool too, is, and you were telling me, is like some of these people that might have not been the most famous off app are like now becoming extremely famous because of VeVe. So we're like undermining their potential, being like comparing it to their old selves and being like, well, here's where they are currently or were. And now on VeVe, they're like celebrities almost. And like, that's the crazy power behind VeVe. Like it could literally like make a company. It could make an artist,
Yeah, exactly. And I've first realized that with the Marvel Comics one,
Yeah.
because it's not a very popular comic. I mean, I was even talking to Ali about it, and he's like, I don't really understand why people like that comic so much. I mean, it's got a lot of historical value, but outside of that, I'm like, yes, Ali, you get it. See, and then I explained to him why, because it's the first NFT, Marvel Comics NFT dropped on VeVe, and it's the first of its kind, and then he's like, oh, okay, got it. Now I'm starting to get it. Now I'm starting to understand. And yeah, it's exciting because I think a lot of that effect is going to happen on these other collectibles, and even like the artist that dropped today. I mean, if you go on his Instagram or Twitter account page, probably doesn't have a lot of followers, but he probably will now.
Yeah.
And I'm excited for the man. Like this is exciting times. If you can get on VeVe, you're probably going to do very well long term.
Exactly.
So awesome.
It's insane. I really think that VeVe is going to be one of those things that will become like a worldwide terminology for NFTs. Like, it'd just be like, oh, like I've always had a vision where I'm watching Disney, and then all of a sudden, right beside Disney is like the VeVe platform. So after you watch a movie, a little icon comes up and it's like, hey, would you like to buy Moana? Like this statue number, like for $60 million and add it to your Disney collection. Like that's just the way I see it. You know what I mean? And then
your price is 84 gems.
Exactly. Right? Your daughter could play with it in VR, because like people keep thinking toys in the next 10 years are going to be the thing that still reigns. I'm like, no, like kids are going to be having like little holographic animations and their faces and like swiping them out of the way, and like that's the future. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. So I feel like 100%. That to me, like that's where VeVe goes, man. Like I don't know how you feel about that, if I'm stretching, but
no, not at all. I mean, it's gonna be wild. It's gonna be wild.
Yeah, right. And it's like I just keep thinking, why wouldn't it go there with the amount of collectibles that it has, and the amount of like potential, right? Like we have Disney IPs, bro. We have Marvel IPs. Like we might have Pokemon. Like I think at this point it's a win. Like people keep thinking, oh, what's coming? And I'm like, just open your eyes. Like it's Christmas.
Yeah.
Go open your presents. Like you're sitting right there. Like, what are you doing? You know what I mean? Like you're waiting to see what's going to come out behind the wall when you're literally, it's Christmas Day. Like start ripping it open.
You're so right, man. And I've seen people like on Facebook group pages that like try to flip their wallets for, for lesser stuff, and or
Yeah.
lesser IP. And I'm just like, guys, man, they have no idea what they're getting rid of. The significance of what they have. The grass isn't always greener on the other side. It's not like this is like the one time that I've really like it's this definition like speaks to my heart. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, like, and it's sad because I mean, long term they'll understand it, but I mean, this falls back into understanding what you're investing in, right? Doing your research. That's so important. You got to do your own research. You got to find your own voice.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have that, you're not going to do well long term as an investor. As a collector, collect whatever you want. It's all, yeah. It's not about investing, right? It's about enjoying what you've bought just for your own personal use.
Right.
But if you're trying to invest, you got to do your research, because the more research you do, the more you'll learn, the more you'll know, and the better investor you'll become, and the more mistakes you'll hopefully not make.
Exactly. Yeah. And you listen to us so you can more me, but you can avoid all those mistakes. And this is, yeah. Yeah. Well, dude, I mean, it's
don't cut yourself short. You've been crushing it since you've been back.
Oh yeah. I've made some good moves, dude. Like
you made some great moves.
Yeah. Some good flips, definitely some nice low mint snatches. Like it's been fun, but it's only because I've made mistakes that I was able to then see that. And I think I always tell you about this, but the biggest concept for me was that zooming out part where I was like, wait a second, like R2-D2 as an example may go to heights that we might have never thought possible. Because why? Because Star Wars is a $65 billion industry and there's so many fans of that damn character. And it's probably the most iconic duo in, cinematic history almost. So it's like, you just know that that has crazy potential. And that's the one thing that I always thought before was that scarcity was going to win. And that's where all the mistakes were made for me. And then now realizing its popularity and those things, because their demand is like sometimes 1,000 to 25,000 times bigger.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Scarcity is very important, guys. Don't get me wrong. But at the end of the day, and it's about popularity. If something's scarce and a lot less people want it, it doesn't really matter, right? It's all about the demand.
You got it.
That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, I always look at it okay, if there's an artist and there's 500 editions of his painting and 10,000 people want it, that's your demand. But if you have R2-D2 as an example, 8,888, but the world demand is 47 million, well, that's kind of how that differs. It's
exactly
right. That's kind of how I starting to see it now.
And the cool thing is too, we've seen the recent pump of these collectibles, so we know that what we believe in is coming to fruition, right? So it's kind of solidifying our belief for the future. So when future characters drop, or some of the biggest Disney characters or Marvel characters drop, we know that it's going to be significant. It's going to hold tremendous value for that reason, So, but again, it all comes back down to doing your research, understanding what you're investing in. Even Thor. If Thor FA drops, how significant is Thor? We know he's an original Avenger. He's very significant. But at the end of the day, you got to dive deeper. Dive even deeper. Try to really fully understand the value of this character. That's really important.
Right. And I think that's why those things that have meaning kind of solidify themselves as grails, because not only could they be very popular characters if they represent the first of something, first DC, first Marvel, first comic, then you just have that added weight. Because I always think okay, if look back on the blockchain in 10 years, what's going to stand out? It's if you look back at football history, American football history in 10 years, you're going to be okay, well, Tom Brady was a slayer. He was the greatest of all time. And, and these teams I remember, but you're not going to remember some catch that somebody made in the third quarter of a playoff game as an example. They'll be forgotten. And that's what some of these NFTs are. What other ones are the Tom Brady's, you know what I mean? And that's just the way that I think people have to start seeing this, because there's going to be so much damn saturation that over time, if you're not opening your eyes and really, like you said, doing your research, you might get left holding the bag somewhere.
Yeah, I mean that's so important. That's so important.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, Sean, thanks so much for coming on, bro. You legend.
So much fun, man. How have we been on for? It's been an hour and a half. That's crazy.
Has it been that long?
I feel like it's been 20 minutes.
I know. See, I love having these chats because it's just, so easy, right? But dude, if anybody isn't following Sean, which I'm sure you all are at Comics and Crypto, and again, Spencer and all the other people are part of that as well as Kevin, right?
Yeah. Kevin, Spencer, and myself, we're all partners in Comics and Crypto.
Exactly. So all part of this, amazing team. that put out this insanely great content. And Sean's been calling the shots from day one. He's so humble that he won't allow me to tell him that he's one of the greatest callers in this game. But yeah, please follow them, give them a like and subscribe. And they're on everything. I think you're on Twitter, you're on Instagram and Facebook, and on YouTube. And then on top of that, you have all your sick Excel sheets of how you rank the comics and all that stuff. So anything I'm missing? No TikTok yet, right?
No TikTok yet. We'll need to expand the team to do that one before we take on that beast. I'm still trying to get used to Discord.
Right. Same.
But just real quick, we're actually doing a free NFT drop. We're partnering with VeVe Whale on Instagram. He made these really cool little whales, and it has our logo on it, and it's awesome. And they're free. There's only 100 of them. So when it's on February 6th, and I believe it's at 3:30 p.m. But there's more details on our Instagram page. So check it out and try to get one because they're free and they're cute.
And it's your FA. It's your FA NFT from Comics and Crypto.
Yeah, I think it is actually. Yeah, I think
right?
so. Yeah.
Who knows what that means in a few years from now.
yeah. That's awesome.
Well, thanks again. And buddy, I've learned a ton from you.
Likewise, Chad.
One of the biggest assets on here. And I really appreciate you coming on. And honored to have you on, brother.
Thanks, man. It's so much fun being here, bud.
Yeah, take care, bro.